Now, the other thing I want to speak about is simple language. We need to think of the psychotic area as equivalent to that of an emotional child. The language you use needs to be simple. Any affectation has to be banished. And the other article that I've put two things there. I put there an article by George Orwell. It's called Politics in the English Language. It's actually not really about politics. It's about the use of the English language. And it's well worth reading, because he talks about the way in which we use certain phrases, cliches, that have become absolutely dead and have really no meaning whatever. And I've also put a list of the sort of words we use the whole time. And I'm not going to read them all out, because I put that list there, which you can take away and read as sort of bedtime reading. But all words like aggression, identification, depression, superego, masochism, sadism, sublimation, anxiety, inferiority complex, repression, all these words need to go into the dustbin. And you need really to think and try to think of what it's about, so that it's in the psychotic part of the personality. There are shapes, images, colors, musical tones. It's the language must be informed by those. And the most important statement, I think, that George Orwell says in that article, he says, rather than just pick a word off the shelf, you must make the effort to find the word that matches the imagery. So that's like the inner imagery you've got to sort of find. Otherwise, the word crushes that, and it has a crushing of. And that's why you very often hear patients with severe disturbance absolutely clamour about the use of words, and they hate the words. They hate them because they crush this sort of elemental type of shapes and images that are within. Also, and I've tried to explain this a bit more later, all sort of sentences like, I think you feel angry that I shan't be seeing you on Thursday, or I think you believe I will condemn you, or you are not working as well as you did because you are depressed, or you're afraid that your aggression will hurt your mother. All these sorts of statements are no good for patients of this sort. They're just too clumsy. They're too long. They're not. They don't sort of hit the emotional button, as it were, where shapes, colours, and movements and musical tones are existing. Now, I'll just give you another example. In Tolstoy's novel War and Peace, one of the main characters, Pierre, is led out by French soldiers with 5 others in 1812. The French army had invaded Moscow, and they were taken out to a wooden stake in the ground where they were all to be executed. And Pierre was there, and he saw the first man shot, the second man shot, the third man, the fourth man, the fifth man, and Tolstoy describes the fifth man being shot very sort of graphically, where he then sort of sinks this young lad. And at the last moment, Pierre himself is pardoned. Now, you see, if you ask me, well, how did that affect Pierre? I would say, oh, he was traumatized. It tells you nothing. We use these words again and again and again. They tell you nothing. What does Tolstoy say? From the moment Pierre had witnessed that hideous massacre committed by men who had no desire to do it, it was as if the spring in his soul, by which everything was held together and given the semblance of life, had suddenly been wrenched out and collapsed into a heap of senseless refuse. Though he did not realize it, his faith in the right ordering of the universe, in humanity, in his own self, and in God had been destroyed. He had experienced this state of mind before, but never with such intensity. When similar doubts had assailed him in the past, they had had their origin in his own wrongdoing, and at bottom of his heart he had felt that salvation from his despair and those doubts were to be found within himself. But this time he could not blame himself that the world had crumbled before his eyes, leaving only meaningless ruins. He felt that to get back to faith in life was no longer in his power. So you get a sense of... so that's... It's like... it's a most sort of evocative description. But this is what we have to, I think, make the effort to do. It's because, as I say, in the emotional center, it's imagery that is present. So words like anxiety, resistance, neurosis are far too far removed from shapes, colors, or musical tones. You can put them, if you have a filing cabinet, you can put a file with anxiety at the top of it, and you can have a whole lot of things in the file. And quite often people say, oh yes, but I don't actually ever speak or use those sort of words with a patient, but I'm afraid we often do. And George Orwell says in that article, with that sort of disarming honesty that he always has, he says, even in this article I will have used some of these sort of cliches against my own better judgment. So to find words that fit the primitive imagery takes an effort. And when someone says something that's sort of arresting in some way or strikes, it takes an effort to try and think, well, what is this, and quite why is it, or why does someone say, I felt depressed when I got better, and well, why is that, and to try and think. And I think one of the sort of skills of the craft, as it were, is to think while the conversation is going on. And I remember very well with that psychotic patient that I had early on in my career, she would just say something and then there'd be a silence for 10 minutes. So I had a sort of a bit of space in which to think. But it's much more difficult if the thing that is said, the significant thing, is then followed with a whole lot of chatter. And it's like there's a necessity to try and sort of shut the chatter out and be able to think, and it's difficult, very difficult. And Bion said it's a bit like being on a sort of battlefield under fire, and it's difficult to think under those conditions. Sometimes one is lucky enough to have a sort of an image that might come. For instance, this image came to me one day when I was treating a young man, and I had just had this sort of flash image of a tiara headband that was studded with individual jewels, and a pair of fingers came and removed a small diamond brooch from the tiara. And I said to the patient, you found a treasure which is precious for you. There are other treasures which are important for others, but you found this one, and this way of thinking means more to you than anything else. He'd been rambling about psychiatry, about psychoanalysis and neuroscience, but he'd read something that Socrates said, and this meant more to him. That image came to me as a sort of dream fragment that I almost missed, but just caught it. And the understanding consists in a dream flash like that then has to be locked into words. If I'd not used the word treasure, I don't think it would have meant anything. It was just that word that caught it. And I don't know if you've had this experience, but I quite often have when I've understood something that I've read, for instance, and then I can't quite remember it, and I have to get back to the actual phrase that the author has used. There's some particular stimulus word or phrase that sparks the understanding, and a whole lot of other words and other things don't do it. It's that particular thing that does it. So it's a bit like that.